Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm hoping that is the case. Okay. Uh, Looks like not many people are in. Typical. Especially right from the beginning. Well, what can I say other than what a crazy time or what a crazy start to this goddamn new year, 2020. I'm going to start this off with a really terrible joke, and that is, what disease goes well with the coronavirus? Lyme disease. Get it? Because it's a goddamn drink. Lyme disease. Okay, it sounds like I'm coming in okay. Though I might be peeking. Tell me if I'm a little too loud or not. Hopefully hopefully everything's coming in fine. So something that's going to be announced in this live show as people sort of dwindle in. Something that's going to be announced in today's live show is that ANP has a new web series that's going to be coming out starting February 27th, I believe. And every Thursday and Saturday there will be a new episode. And this will take place over the course of 5 weeks. The trailer will be debuting as its own video on the following Saturday, next week. But it will be playing at some point during today's stream, though I'm not quite sure when or where that is just yet. Anyways, but that's going to take up about 5 weeks. And again, there's going to be a new episode that comes out every Thursday and every Friday. It's not just one video. If something really big happens within that time period, maybe I'll break the schedule and post a podcast talking about it. But it'd need to be pretty goddamn big for it. And then once that series is done, the first video that's going to be posted after that is definitely going to be... or will definitely be the I don't know what to call it. Probably be another live stream. I'm not quite sure. Not quite sure what the state of things will be by that point. But I also want to really sort of stress that my podcasts are going to be taking a new direction. I've sort of become stale in my presentation. It's sort of been that same sort of formula throughout the thing. I am now taking my podcast in a different direction. There's still going to be like the same content. Godzilla, westerns, obscure movies. The Godzilla vlogs is still going to be a thing. It's just the presentation is going to be a little bit different. I remember way back when I first started doing these things that it was mainly just me sitting in front of a camera, kind of like what I'm doing right now, and just talking. And usually the movie poster was over on the side, one side of me or something like that. But then I went away with that and just started going with a slideshow that kind of represented what I was talking about, be it screenshots from the film or screenshots from filmmakers and anything like that. And I've got a whole smorgasbord of rare behind-the-scenes pictures that I really like to show off, especially when it comes to, Godzilla stuff and everything like that. Well, I'm kind of going to do the both things now. Now that I have a really decent camera that I can record a lot of this stuff off of, that's indeed what I'm going to be doing. So that way people can not just listen, they can also watch if they so wish. So it'll be a little mixture of both. A little more editing on my part, but that sort of comes with the job. And I'm in a position technology-wise that I can absolutely do this and really get away with it. No one's watching. Uh-oh. Oh, well. Hi, Justin. Make sure to share the stream around. Probably going to be a really light crowd again, as normal. Hold on, I'm just going to take care of something really quick. Antonio has really gotten me into electric swing music and electro sax music, and I have yet to get out of it. Sort of makes me a little upset. 2020. Oh God, it's gonna be the end of the world. Well, we're all gonna die from the coronavirus anyways, so it doesn't really matter anymore. The coronavirus is just gonna kill us all. Hi, Jenny. So, hold on. I gotta grab this. I've got to grab this. So, it debuted in, let's see, the last live show, my shotgun shot glass, as it were. This is my shotgun shot glass from Ripley's Believe It or Not. Well, I think I'm going to be finishing my Dan Aykroyd Crystal Head vodka today, which is unfortunate. She's been a wonderful little gal. Definitely will be getting it again, but haha. I'm going to pour my shot. We got a little more than a shot. Oh, well. Well, cheers to 2020 and the coronavirus. May we all die quickly and painlessly as fucking possible. Ah! Huh. There. That really warms the belly. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's all she wrote. Oh! Okay. Wonderful stuff. Oh, man. Well, hey, John. That's the guy that does the music for all my stuff, by the way. Well, then go to bed, sir. I'm sorry to have disturbed you on this Saturday night where you're not supposed to be going to bed at 9 at night. You're supposed to be going to bed at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning like everybody else does. I just really noticed how fucking crooked the fucking posters are in the back of me. I really should take care of that. Well, I want to work schmirk. Whatever. Pussy. I really should just individualize those posters because I have a Godzilla vs. Hedorah fan poster in the way. And I kind of want to keep the Godzilla Saga posters together all at the same place. Wow. What a beautiful house. The best dub ever. Justin, that is the best dub ever. So, something that I'm going to dive into right away is a trend I have noticed with Godzilla movies. And the producer in me is screaming to the top of my lungs. And that's because if you really look at it, the only truly successful Godzilla movies, besides Godzilla and Mothra the Battle of Earth, from like the Heisei series and even the Millennium series, were the ones that had somewhat of a release over here in the United States. And I started looking at the budgets of these things, right? Because, again, I'm a nerd. And most of the budgets for these movies ranged anywhere from $9 million to, or the equivalents, of $9 million to $10 million, or $12 million, somewhere in that range. And I'd look at the returns of these movies, and they would be in the upwards of anywhere from $12 million to, $20 million. And $20 million is only because of Godzilla vs. Mothra, made in 1992. And it sort of irks me because those were like some of the biggest budgeted movies in Japan. In fact, the budgets were so big for those movies. The budgets were so big for those movies, they had a hard time recuperating their money back. And so you naturally get somewhat of a problem with it, because it's very clear that Godzilla sort of relies on foreign releases in order to make its money back. Now, not always, but if you look at the budgets from the Heisei series and you go over into the... Hold on, the chat's driving me crazy. I gotta fix it. There we go. and that's somewhat of a... What I'm saying is, look at the budget from the Heisei series and then compare that to not only the Heisei Gamera movies, but also the Millennium Godzilla movies. For example, I'm going to pull it up right now. Godzilla 2000 had a very minuscule budget. It had a budget smaller than those of the Heisei series. And that is, it had a budget of roughly $8 million. Compared to the $12 million it really took to make Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Destroya. So, and yet, somehow Godzilla 2000 somewhat looks a little bit better than Space Godzilla or Destroya. And I'm saying that not in terms of some of the CGI effects. Some of those are pretty bad. But I'm talking about in terms of the creativity and how the monsters were shot. And a lot of that came off because a lot of Godzilla 2000 was shot on green screen, everything like that. It used a lot more compositing, for good and for bad. But I'm like, Jesus Christ, these movies, the Heisei movies cost so much, and they look so flat. Koichi Kawakita... Koichi Kawakita, to me, just lacks the visual imagination to truly make those movies something special. Now, there's one big reason why he resorted to spamming. You know, he was a special effects director, to beam spamming, quote-unquote. One is because he liked animation. That's where he started. That's the department that he started in when he was working at Toho. And... of course, that carried over into his movies. But the other is that he was putting so much money and articulation into those suits. Because if you look at those suits, they're fantastic. I mean, I love how they move. Especially in Space Godzilla, they started allowing it where Godzilla's head didn't just move up or down. It could move right or left or anything in between at the same time. That was the first Godzilla suit that ever did that. And that's pretty cool. But part of the result of that, making these suits so heavy, not only that, but heavy, because the more stuff that you add there and to make them articulate, the heavier they get. You couldn't really jostle them around that much. And so a lot of what happened was beam spamming. Now, Godzilla versus Mothra, I think, is an exception, because Mothra and Batra are both winged monsters versus a two-legged monster from the ground. So I think the beam spamming is certainly justifiable in that film. And I also think the beam spamming in Godzilla versus King Ghidorah is very justifiable in that last act, because apparently the Mecha King Ghidorah suit was so goddamn heavy that they actually couldn't put a suit actor in it, and that's why you don't see that suit moving around that much other than the heads going up and down. It had to be completely controlled by wires, which in itself is impressive. But you look at the cinematography of those movies, right? And you look at the budgets that they had, and I can't reiterate this enough. They had the largest budgets out of a movie to be released in Japan those years. To the point that it was hurting how much money that they were taking in. The movies were costing too much, which is partially why they wanted to retire Godzilla in 1995. They were sort of being forced to do that, because the audiences that were usually there in the 60s and early 70s were no longer there. And it was also very clear that America had no interest in releasing any of these movies in theaters. And so then you look at Heisei Gamera, directed, where the special effects were directed by Shinji Higuchi, and you can just see where the creative juices were flowing in that man's mind. Because you look at how the Gamera Guardian of the Universe alone, which had the lowest budget out of any of those three films, which none of them had gargantuan budgets, by the way. But that was the one that honestly looked. There's no comparison as to which one looks better. You look at how the special effects are framed and shot, even though they might be a little bit more clunky. How they're framed, they're shot, and presented on screen in Gamera Guardian of the Universe, and compare that to Godzilla vs. Destroya, there's no competition. The integration of the special effects and the actual monster fights themselves are so much more visceral and detailed in the Heisei, in Gamera Guardian of the Universe than in Godzilla vs. Destroya. Now, again, that's not me poo-pooing on Godzilla vs. Destroya, because, as I said, Godzilla vs. Destroya is my second favorite Godzilla movie of all time. But it just sort of irks me that the special effects were not more creative, especially considering how much money there was. Which always brings me back to that sort of mentality that art relies on restrictions. And again, the director of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, who had a very, very tight budget to work with on that film, said that quote, Nicholas Meyer, art relies on restrictions. And that really comes to mind, because that to me defines the Heisei Gamera series in a nutshell, is just how creative they had to be to present the special effects, especially when mixing it with live-action animation, or live-action elements versus that of the suits. And I'd say that's even more so brought out in Gamera 2. In Gamera 2, Advent of Legion, my favorite shot in that film is actually where a character is looking out the window up at Gamera, right? And then the point of view is shot, the camera is shot through this little thing to make it look like it's from his point of view, his POV shot from in the Jeep, but it's just a little miniature thing held in front of the lens. Meanwhile, the camera is not moving, the set is what's moving, and they're making Gamera look like he's moving. So it's some of the same technique that we see over in Godzilla vs. Biollante, where Godzilla is walking, but he's actually not walking at all. It's the set moving, while the camera is staying still with Godzilla, thus making it look like he's walking when really he's not. But again, that there just screams to me how creative Shinji Higuchi was when presenting the special effects in those movies, especially when making the monsters look huge. And I mean huge. However, I will say this, that the Gamera films had nowhere near the amount of double projection shots or those integrated shots where Godzilla... In the Heisei series, there are a lot of these great, fantastic shots of Godzilla walking through live-action cities and stuff like that in the background. And while some of them certainly do look clunky, especially in Space Godzilla, the ones in Destroya with the dark lighting and Godzilla glowing and stuff like that, especially during the Hong Kong destruction scene, look fantastic. And Koichi Kawakita was very good at that. He was also very good, if you look at the early Heisei Godzilla movies where he jumped on board with, he was bound and determined to make shots where the camera would pan, and it would also integrate with the Godzilla special effects shots. So, one that jumps to mind is in Godzilla vs. Biollante, where the camera starts with the characters running out onto the dock, and the camera pans up, and there's Biollante out in the water. And it's seamless. It is seamless. And in fact, I want to say he was the first special effects director to really get on board with that, to really try and do that. But as the films go along, it's like he didn't bother to do that anywhere near as much anymore. And a lot of people have always clamored to the fact that he was always pressed for time, and including him. And I don't envy the time restrictions that he's had in those movies. But Koichi Kawakita often would talk about how much time restraint that he had, and that definitely reflected his work. And I don't see that as a valid excuse. I don't. To me, that should only push the creativity even more. Look at the Seijun Suzuki movies. He was always pressed for time and money, and oftentimes Nikatsu would just cut his time to make these movies down and down even more. So he'd start getting really creative and extravagant with how he'd shoot it, and creative in terms of how he'd shoot his movies. That's what should have happened, but no, Koichi Kawakita really failed at capturing the scale of these monsters, especially if you compare them to not only his earlier works in the Godzilla series, but also the Heisei Gamera films, or fuck, I'll even say it, a lot of the Millennium movies. I mean, look at GMK, which, I mean, GMK had a pretty decent budget. It wasn't as large as the ones from the Heisei series, but it had a decent budget. I think, no, Final Wars had the largest budget. But anyways, let's look at two modestly budgeted Godzilla movies from the Millennium series. Mechagodzilla and Tokyo SOS. Those two movies were extremely creatively shot, and though, yeah, I kind of think they fall flat in many areas, and still don't hold up to the Heisei Gamera series, I like a lot of those shots where the camera is always stationed below eye level, and there's buildings and stuff in the foreground and everything like that to add a sense of scale to what is going on. That's not in the later Heisei movies, especially. To me, the worst one is Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 in terms of how it's shot. And it just irks me because Koichi Kawakita had so much power on set. Really, he did. Other than time, he had pretty much all the money he could have worked with in terms of a Japanese film. And that's the best he could do, and that's where I think he falls flat. Even his Mothra films have this problem. And they just fall flat. In some ways, Justin, I would say that Higuchi's work in Attack on Titan is better than Shin Godzilla, but that's because it's a completely different style of film. First off, the giant Titan, I think, looks fantastic. I genuinely believe that. I just think some of his integration, his biggest weakness in that film was the integration of live action elements with the puppetry or the suits. That was his weak point. And that is where Shin Godzilla really excelled at. It was very good. And again, I think it's because the action in Shin Godzilla was so much slower than Attack on Titan. So it kind of required the same techniques, but presented in a different way. So it's kind of hard to say which one's better. I think Shin Godzilla as a whole looks better, just because I prefer that sort of slow style of action, especially in a Godzilla movie. Also, I just think Shin Godzilla, is a much superior film to his Attack on Titan movies, and that's because I don't think Shinji Higuchi can direct live action people to save his life. Maybe he can get better, but the only reason why he approached Hideaki Anno to make this, one, was because it was his best friend, and two, he knew Hideaki Anno. Hideaki Anno can at least get a performance out of people, and he can also write the living fuck out of people. Sorry, I just got a message. Sorry, I just got a film festival notification in which I need to indeed talk about that. Am I frozen? No, I wasn't. Cool. See, I wanted Trevor here because I wanted to talk about Dracula 2020, but no one's really here. So this is kind of a problem. Because I wanted to talk about Dracula 2020 because I was so excited for that fucking show, and it turned out to be utter garbage. I'm just messaging this guy right now. Bum, bum, bum. Sorry, business calls. Something for my movie, Some Terrible Grief. A possible film fest out in Georgia that is interested in my movie, which is awesome. Okay. So, dysfunctional family. That was the theme of that film festival, and he said Some Terrible Grief might do good in it. So, I sent it over. Let him know what's going on. Hopefully, Jenny, if you're listening, you should be excited. I gotta say, making Some Terrible Grief, that film, was probably, as a whole, probably the most organized we've ever been on a movie. And it went really well. At the beginning, it was a little rocky, but I haven't been on a film where like the first couple of shots aren't really rocky, and then you sort of get into the flow of it. Some Terrible Grief went off really, really well. And I need to thank my AD for that, Jenny Pautke. She really knows how to keep me in line. The best film shoot I've ever been on was Pineapple. That I had a blast making that. In half of the movie, I was on the ground, covered in fake blood. And I remember the makeup girl and the AD. They were walking up to me with these giant things of Caro corn syrup that we made to look like blood. And they just come up to me, and they're just carefully putting it on me. And so I just said, nuh-uh. And I give it to me, take off the cap, and just dump it all over me. And I'm like, yeah, that's how you do it. And if there's anything that I'm very happy that, or anything that you can say that I'm really good at, thanks John Weekly, by the way, it's that I like to think I'm good at making fake blood. I mean, if you watch some of what we've done if you go over to the Sierra Facebook page, which is almost done, on the 8th we're doing a bunch of Foley work for it, but on Sierra, the amount of fucking blood that we had spraying all over the place was insane. And you're gonna watch something from AAL, Antonio, Adam, and Lucas, a new web series is coming out, where blood just sprays everywhere. And the thing is, with that Caro corn syrup, it comes out. It doesn't even matter that I'm using like a shit ton of food coloring in it or anything like that. You use a lot of red, and then you mix a little bit of blue in there if you want it to be darker, or a little bit of yellow if it's arterial. And it sort of depends on what feeling you go for. I personally like the yellow a lot. I just think it makes it look a little grimier. Doesn't stain floors or anything like that, and comes out so easily. Just put hot water on it and then mop it. And you're golden. Though we do have a hard time watching out for like walls and stuff like that, because the food coloring would definitely stain the walls. But yeah, but again, it was a massive testament to the crew that we had working on Sierra, particularly the producers and Jenny. And I got to say, Jenny really saved the day, because one of our actors threatened the 2 dogs that lived here and threatened to hurt them. And needless to say, I was not a happy camper, and I fired his ass and kicked him out of the house. And luckily, we were 75% done with his stuff. However, that left us with the predicament. That day, we were going to be shooting all of his stuff. And anyways, we all sort of shut the door in my room, because we were shooting it in here, tore apart my room completely, shut the door, and looked at our shot lists that we had in our schedules and said, all right, let's move this here, let's move this here, let's move this here, let's move this here, and basically that night I stayed up for the remainder of the night, because these were night shoots. I stayed up and reworked the ending, which I really didn't need to rework it much, And boom, the next day we were ready to go. We had the two main actors in there. We finished shooting with our wounded actor who was spraying blood all over the place, and we were ready to go. And that was a true testament to who worked with me, to the crew and the producers, particularly the partners at ANP. Which another thing which I wish to announce is that Antonio actually became Antonio Badaglieri from Game Controller Network. He actually became a partner. Finally, I just sort of sat down and said, "Screw it, he's going to become a partner." We all agreed on it, and bam, now he's in. So, welcome, Antonio. We already had our welcome thingy, but I am certainly glad that he is on board, because Antonio is my inner id. He is that primal area of me that just wants to scream and come out and destroy things and do really silly shit. And it's really funny because Jenny is my super ego, to go full Freudian. She is my super ego because she is the one that sort of has to throw out the fishing line and rein me in a bit, because I tend to get really sidetracked and wind up going crazy with Antonio. So, and then of course I have to be the ego because I run this goddamn company. So, that is the deal with this. So, since the chat really isn't going nowhere, I'm just going to start my rant. Social fucking justice warriors, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm just going to say it right now. I watched Dracula 2020. Was super excited for it. The trailer looked great. And I really loved the look of the guy that they got to play Dracula. Super excited to sit down and watch it when it came out on Netflix. I had my popcorn ready. I was laying down on that bed right over there on a big-ass screen TV, full surround sound system hooked up, ready to watch it. The biggest piece of shit I have seen in a long time. Like, I know 2020 has just started. I think that will be the worst thing I see this year. Nothing can possibly top it. Absolutely nothing can possibly top Dracula 2020. And the biggest reason why this show was utter fucking garbage was because of the SJW liberal bullshit that they said, hey, we're going to put that into our movie. Right from the get-go, I'm going to ask this question. Probably none of you are going to answer because hardly anyone's watching. But we all know that Romania was such a microcosm, right? But in 1897, I can guarantee you that there was hardly any Asians in Romania, especially in 1897, or any black people, let alone Asian and black nuns in Romania in 1897. Okay, so that aside, that groaning aside, the first thing that made me truly go, what, and groan, was when our lead woman, who is basically this film's Van Helsing, goes, I'm an educated woman, I am your worst nightmare. That is a line. That is a fucking line in this fucking movie. I am an educated woman, and I am your worst nightmare. Fuck off. Fuck the fuck off. First off, one, you're a nun. That wouldn't be that. No, no. Nuns are the most repressed people on the face of the earth. And two, this is 1897 Romania. What the fuck are you doing? First off, they wouldn't even speak like that in the 1897. But okay. When Jonathan Harker, who first off he has sex with Dracula. So Dracula's officially gay. First off, that actually doesn't bother me. The fact that they made this Dracula bisexual, because to me Dracula sort of fits that role very well. Kind of in the same vein as a Dorian Gray, where Dracula doesn't really care about sex. All he cares about is, I want to drink blood. And they sort of played that in this, so at first I was like, that's okay. Yeah. But, anyways, he's reading a letter from his wife, and he knows that, he's going to be away for a long time. He tells her that she can sleep with other women, and she's telling him that he can sleep with other women. And she's also confessing to this man that she has been eyeing a woman. Excuse me, this is 1897 Romania. And meanwhile, these people are from England, right? Which is even more fucking crazy than Romania because of the Episcopal nonsense, the Church of England nonsense. She would in no way, shape, or form fucking admit that she has been eyeing a woman. She would in no fucking way say that it's okay for him to sleep with other women, because that's a sin, and people in 1897 England actually gave a fucking shit for some goddamn reason. So immediately, I'm like, what? Okay, let's continue. But the tone is also all over the place. Just all over the fucking place in this goddamn piece of shit. And I later found out that the writers of the film worked on the Doctor Who movies and Sherlock, which made me go, no wonder why this was shit. Because Sherlock is shit, and Doctor Who is shit. Yes, I said it. Doctor Who is shit. It is garbage. Literally, this new season that came out with the woman in it and how SJW that they have gone, it's completely destroyed any sensibility of me wanting to see this movie. First off, and it's not the fact that the Doctor is now a woman. That I don't give a shit about. And in fact, I'm actually surprised that the Doctor hasn't been a woman before. It's the fact that she is such a blatant equality for... I have a hard time talking about this. Because one of the things, John, you sort of mentioned it. Don't let stuff get in the way of equality. To me, equality is the most disgusting word in the English language. Equality. Because it is so damning. And to me, equality leads to utter destruction. The only time I am in favor of equality is when someone is born. When someone is born, that is the only time where I'm like, okay, equality, they start equal at the starting line. After that, the training wheels are off, ladies and gentlemen. And the reason why I don't think equality is really a thing, and why equality is such a disgusting thing, is because we have a hierarchy. You wouldn't have bosses if we were all equal. We wouldn't have camp counselors if we were all equal. That was something that always irked me at this camp that I went to, was they're like, oh, we're all equal. We need to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Oh, well, if we're all equal, then I'm going to do my own thing. In which they would always say, no, you can't do that. So then we're not equal. So that whole idea never really clicked with me. And then it just drives me crazy. I'm really sorry. That was kind of a rant that I didn't really want to go on, but that's what happens when you talk about Dracula 2020. The third episode, by the way, Dracula uses Grindr. I just want to say that right now. Dracula was indeed using Grindr. You see him scrolling through Grindr, and immediately I went, oh god. And of course, the main protagonist's girlfriend in that episode, he's white, she has to be black. She absolutely has to be black. And that has to be a portion of her character, that she is a black woman. No, stop it with that garbage. Stop it with that garbage. You want to write women in movies? You want to treat them like that? You want to write women into their films? The first thing you need to do is write them as a character. Okay? That's one of the things that I really loved about, or at least for a while, in like the first 7 seasons of Shameless, the US one. Ian's a gay character. He has a whole arc with him and Mickey. I mean, it's the only thing that was really holding together season 10. But even he goes off the SJW rail after a while. We'll probably get into that a little later. But his entire thing was that he was a character first. He just happened to be gay. I loved that so fucking much. You have no idea how much I loved that. Part of my problem with Steve Cortez in the Mass Effect trilogy is that he was clearly written to be your gay character in the series. Which, granted, you were supposed to have a gay character in Mass Effect 1. They were too afraid to do that, and then they didn't do anything in Mass Effect 2, and so you finally get one in Mass Effect 3. That's fine, whatever. However, he was clearly written gay character, gay in mind first. Then his character came. His character comes second. And I have a problem with that. Granted, I think he has a pretty good character in that. You know, he's mourning over the death of his husband to the hands of the collectors and everything like that, which ties directly into the previous games. So I'm like, they at least did a decent job with that. But it was just very clear what their mentality was going into writing said character, and that's why I never really cared for him. However, the best example that I could think of is Ripley. Actually, no. I have a more obscure character that I really like, and it's from a very old movie, and it's called The Wild Geese, which is a really fun movie. I highly recommend it. But there is a gay character in that movie, and he's the medic. And what I love about how they portray him in the movies, they do portray him as a bit flamboyant and everything like that. But never does he ever really go out of his way to say, yes, I'm gay. Well, he does a couple of times, but it's because it's the butt end of a joke. He's proving a point. And it sort of all serves together into his character as a whole. The fact that he's gay is just sort of like a little side effect of his character. And that's great. I love that. And he's hysterical. And on top of that, he manages to keep our characters alive. He sacrifices himself to save our characters. So to me, that was a great representation of gays in films that people don't ever really realize. However, he is a bit flamboyant, don't get me wrong. But to me, that sort of adds to his character. He's the flamboyant one out of everyone in this group. And it adds a bit of comedic... a lightheartedness to when things get really serious. It's a can of fresh air in an otherwise pretty damn serious movie. Fun movie, but pretty damn serious. And on top of that, everyone likes him. Even the regular soldiers who know he's gay. They even offer, we'll find you a bit of tail. You know, that when they're all going, and he's like, no thanks, ladies. I'll be back here with some penicillin. And he just runs off in the medic tent. That's hysterical. I love that. Totally on board with stuff like that. But that also goes into Janeway, Captain Janeway from Star Trek. That was my biggest fucking problem with her as well, was that the writers always treated her as the female captain. Not the captain, which is how they should have treated her. They should have treated her as the captain who happens to be a woman, which is how they treated Sisko. Sisko was the captain who happened to be black in Deep Space Nine. And that's the biggest problem. In order to they forcefully make their cast diverse, with the mentality of reaching more audiences, with the fact of being PC. They need to get these demographics in there. Star Wars did it in droves. I'm not even going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But what's one that I can really mention here? Well, anyways, that's part of my problem with that. You can have a diverse cast in your stuff, and I mean that full-heartedly. Just write them as characters first and foremost. Hamburger Hill is a great example of this. The characters in that movie, some are black and everything like that, some are Korean. I mean, not the best of movie, but at least in that, it presented the characters as just that. They were characters stuck in a horrible situation. Their race came second. All right? That's fine. And I love that stuff. That's how you gotta write a diverse cast. You have to make sure that their characters need to be able to stand on their own first and foremost before you can throw in stuff about sexuality, before you can throw in their stuff about their gender even. Their characters need to be able to stand on their own first and foremost. Which was one reason why, again, I like Shameless so much. Shameless, Ian really did stand on his own. The fact that he was gay was inconsequential, you know. And then it became a part of his character arc. In fact, that's when it started to irk me more, was that it was nothing but he was gay. He was the gay character, and I was like, oh, come on. Let's move on. And then when they brought in that transsexual character that he sort of falls in love with for a little while, I think his name was Trevor, that's when I completely lost interest, because now they were talking about social equality and everything like that. He was becoming the gay Jesus, and I'm like, I don't fucking care. Hi, Nick Jackson. I am on a rant about equality in movies and how it's bullshit. Because of Dracula 2020 really driving me crazy. I didn't want to talk about that. You know, I didn't want to talk about that, but because for a while there, I was just happily watching stuff on my own and sort of getting past everything and was just enjoying movies. But Dracula 2020 really took the fucking cake in terms of social justice bullshit that sort of sat in there. Right, I couldn't... Look, here's what I care about, especially if you're making a historical film, or a film that takes place in a designated period in fucking history. You can do one of two things. You can either go all out and go fucking insane and not be historically accurate at all, like the Wild Wild West, or you buckle down and be as historically accurate as possible. You can't do this fucking bullshit in-between stuff, because that's not how it fucking works. Alright? And Call of Duty, the latest Call of Duty, the World War II one that came out, I don't think that's the latest Call of Duty anymore, but whatever. It always irked me that there was a black soldier in that group. And not because he was black, but because regiments were still segregated at that time. If you wanted to have a black character in your Call of Duty World War II's thing, make it about a black regiment. There were several of them. In fact, the tankers, there was a huge tank regiment that was made of black mechanics and black soldiers. Why don't you make a game about them instead of having to do this whole forcefully diverse thing? The other one was that woman that was there. If you really wanted to fucking have women in your game that takes place in World War II, set it on the Eastern Front. Set it in China. Be a Chinese soldier fighting the Japanese. They had plenty of women in their army. The Russians, they had entire brigades of just women who the Germans feared almost more than the men. So that irks me, because historically there were women on the field. Historically there were black people on the field fighting in World War II. Just not remotely in the way that the game presents. Not remotely. And you could have easily picked, if you wanted to be diverse, you could have easily have done so. But they didn't. They have to shove that fucking equality and that everyone's equal and that everything is all happy good. Everybody holds their fucking hands and sing Kumbaya. And no Nazi symbols on anything. And bam. Oh, absolutely. John, take as long of a break as you want. Anything by Sabaton. Just take a break. Actually, I've been pretty good after this rant. I've been pretty decent, and Productions is actually going outstanding. Very happy with what happened in 2019, and I'm really looking forward to 2020. I can't actually say that enough. I think 2020 is going to be a really big year for all of us. Well, for A&P. And as I said before, the next, starting February 27th, a new web series is coming out called Antonio, Adam, and Lucas. That'll be going on for 5 weeks. 2 episodes uploaded a week, one on Thursday and then one on Saturday. So for 5 weeks, that's what's going to be posted. And it's a skit show. That's what it is. But we wanted to, well, I wanted to release it as a series more than anything else. And that's exactly what it is. So we're releasing season 1 there. We're actually already working on season 2. We're about ready to shoot it, actually. So we're super excited for that. And all I can say is that insanity is coming to AN Productions. In fact, I'll be playing the trailer during this live show at some point. Oh, he just moved to a new place. Nice. Nice. Oh, did you? Nice. Yeah, I'm about to reach 1,000, so I'm super excited for that too. Maybe I'll reach 1,000 by the end of this show. That would be really cool, but I doubt it. Slowly growing. I actually gained 300 subscribers last year, which I'm extremely proud of, especially once I started switching things over to the podcast-related format, which I'm only extending that further. Again, it's going to be a new podcast format going forward after AAL. There's a couple of podcasts that are still waiting to come out. One is about Conga, that masterpiece. But then there's going to be a new format. And we're also in the process of finishing the film Sierra, which admittedly it has taken me way too long to finish. Sierra, we shot literally over a year ago, and it's just barely... In fact, I think I'm going to finish Picture Lock tomorrow, and then I'm going to be really focusing on the gunshot effects and everything. I already done most of the gunshot effects today. I went through and I did most of the gunshot effects today. Now that I know how to do them properly and not junky like I did in Compound of Chaos, because I did the muzzle flashes in that as well. Oh god, Conga is such a fun bad movie. You got to admit that. I mean, it's garbage. But Conga is a blast because of how bad it is. And a part of that goes into just how much Michael Gough and the leading actress in that movie give it their fucking all. They are bound and determined. They are sure that Conga is terrifying, and I love that for this reason. Conga versus Gorgo does need to happen. There needs to be a MonsterVerse British cinematic universe, so that means the giant behemoth has to somehow be involved in there as well. But let's see. Conga, I don't care what anyone says, I still think the Conga suit is better than either of the Toho King Kong suits. There, I said it. I said it. Alright? And here's why. Here is why. The Conga... Good night, John S. Weekly. May you rest well, good sir. You're right, it is, but not by much. However, the reason why that Kong suit works, or I'm sorry, the Conga suit is better, in my opinion, than the two Toho suits is because you can see the actor's eyes within the suit itself. That's the actor's eyes looking around in the Conga suit. Also, apparently that Conga suit, that gorilla suit was actually used in Robot Monster. Because apparently, yesterday was National Gorilla Suit Day. And I felt really bad. I was like, oh shit, you know what? I should have really released the Conga podcast this week. But no, I was bound and determined to do this. So let's talk about Conga right now. Conga is what a bizarre movie. And no one but AIP could release that. And apparently the guys who made that made the masterpiece I was a teenage werewolf, which explains a lot. But can we also just acknowledge the fact that everyone fucking dies in that movie? Yeah, they pulled no punches on that one. Oh, the Toho suits are horrendous. They just are. And to the point where it's almost distractingly, I can't watch the movies, because King Kong Escapes, in my opinion, that's the better of the two gorilla suits, because that halfway, quarter way looks like a gorilla. Um, but even then, that suit looks just terrible, and a lot of it has to deal with the notion of suit making itself. It's one of the limitations of making a man in a suit in terms of your special effects. Mammals are very expressive, you know? Like look at a dog, they're very expressive. Look at a gorilla, look at an actual gorilla, they are very expressive. And in stop motion animation you can do that. Actually, one of the reasons why I think Son of Kong is as good as it is because Willis O'Brien put so much character into Kong's son. I just saw that Up From the Depths did a review of Son of Kong, by the way, and I completely disagreed with it. He said it's just a really shallow movie. I completely disagree. Is it the original? Fuck no. Nowhere close, but I still think Son of Kong is a very solid movie. I enjoyed it. Especially Carl Denham. Carl Denham's relationship with Kong's son, I think, is genuinely great. But anyways, and people will point to Kong 76 as being, well, Adam, suitmation in that was pretty good. Well, that's because they made multiple faces. Toho didn't have the money or the time to do that. And so when Kong was angry in Kong 76, it was a different face. When Kong was happy and giving, Dwan the rape eyes, it was a different face. It was a different suit. And that's how they were able to get so much emotion out of it. Sometimes they would switch it in between shots. That's how they got so much emotion out of that suit. And to me, it worked great. I think the Kong suit in Kong 76 looks great. Not so much in King Kong Lives, but that's beside the point. And at least in the Konga suit, granted, Konga doesn't have a character. Like, there's nothing that drives Konga other than the fact that he's a zombie to Michael Goff. So even the suit actor inside, despite the fact that we can see his eyes, has absolutely nothing to work with. And that's such a letdown because, look what Tsuburaya was able to do with the Gargantuas. Or even the Yeti in Half Human. He made those look utterly fantastic. And one reason why, despite the fact that the suits are kind of stiff, is because the actor was able to emote because we can see their eyes. Also, that adds that they can interact with the set more, too. But yeah, there we go. Well, King Kong Escapes is a very popular movie for some reason. I think it is the American cut is a blast because of the dub. The dub really allows me to sit back and enjoy it, and just especially Doctor Who. Shiro Honda-thon really goes into that. But my Shiro Honda-thon episode is really popular. One of the more popular ones, too. In fact, I'd say it was the most popular, if I remember correctly. I haven't looked at the numbers forever, and to be honest, I don't really care. Drink, because my throat is starting to hurt. Again, this live stream will be ending at around 11:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, ladies and gentlemen. A tradition that I want to start on the ANP live streams is I want to do a shot of a drink at the beginning of every episode, or some sort of alcoholic beverage at the beginning of every episode, because, quite frankly, I have fun doing that, and trying new alcoholic beverages has sort of become my thing. No, I am not an alcoholic. Actually, I hardly drink at all. But at my job, we do a show called Liquid Lunch and Learn. And a part of that is they always crack open a beer and drink the beer. I'm not a huge fan of beer at all, so I will say that beers will probably not be very prominent on this show. That's all I will really say about that. I have recently been really into one-shot films, both of you. I've been really interested in that simply because I saw 1917 in theaters. And I will gladly say that that was a pretty fucking solid movie. The biggest problem I had with 1917 was the fact that the geography and makeup of everything makes no sense at all. For example, like they're walking through the lines, and here's the British line, here's the German line. They cross no man's land to get into here. You mean to tell me that they then have to reach another British line here? That makes no sense. The geography in 1917 doesn't make much of sense. However, I wanted to bring that up because there is a lot of artistry in that movie in terms of like the chart sequences. Like they actually had 1,200 extras during the chart sequence, and that was really impressive. And I'm not a fan of one-shot movies, to be very clear. I like long takes, but that's different than liking one-shot movies. A long take can be great. Like I just recently watched Touch of Evil, and everyone always goes to that opening crane shot that goes on for 3.5 minutes. But there is a 5.5 minute one-shot scene. It's an entire scene that takes place in one building. And it goes from one part of the building to the other, then back to the front of the building. And it's one continuous shot. And that's awesome. That scene, it really, really got me thinking. In fact, that's probably going to be my next big project, is some sort of one-shot movie. In which I'm super excited for. We actually already are. We already got the first draft done of the script. Now we're just working on the second, which the second draft should be done on Monday. So we're already well on our way with that. However, I also watched Alfred Hitchcock's Tightrope, which Alfred Hitchcock's Tightrope was an interesting experiment that I don't think really worked. However, I thought the story was really good. You see, one take films I think work best for war movies, because I watched The Revenant and I hated that. It was so boring. It just didn't work. But for a war movie, one take scenes could work so well because there's just so much shit going on. Which, by the way, I want to applaud, going back to what I was talking about earlier about SJW bullshit. In 1917, they were very historically accurate in terms of who was actually fighting, how old they were, which they were all very young, and what they said was said on screen. So that was huge props to Sam Mendes for not giving in and saying, there needs to be a black soldier here. The only thing that could really count as being equality is that they threw in a woman character, but she was a civilian hiding underneath some bombed out ruins. Now, despite the fact that I'm not really a big fan of that part in particular, that's justifiable in my opinion, because of course there might be women, hiding in the bombed out ruins of your city. So that's much more believable than, what has been done in other movies where she has to be a badass. No, she's not even a mother. She just found this baby and she holds the baby. She takes the baby in. That's all she does. And that's, if you're going to have some sort of gender equality in your movie, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. So that was my one thing in there. I like The Patriot. Very historically accurate, but inaccurate. But there's some things that they do get right. The uniforms, the muskets, everything like that. Even some of the tactics a lot of the tactics that are used in a film are very accurate. So I really do enjoy the movie. And what can I say? It jerks off the United States. And I'm okay with that. Any movie that really sort of jerks off the United States in a historical manner, I'm on board with. But, well, I shouldn't say that because I don't like Midway. The new movie Midway that just came out I thought was atrocious. Because it took all the tension of what actually happened in the battle out and replaced it with this absolutely terrible, terrible pro-America dialogue that just doesn't fit remotely. I like Braveheart, too. Braveheart's another example of a movie that's not very historically accurate, but they captured a lot of the costumes and everything like that, and even some of the tactics they captured. So, I like them both. I prefer The Patriot because that's more of a time period that I enjoy and know a lot more about. They really should make a movie about the Swamp Fox, though, because that's who Mel Gibson's character is in The Patriot, is the Swamp Fox. Um, and the real Swamp Fox was kind of fucked up. Uh, a very interesting character. That's all. That's all I'll say. You should definitely look him up. The Women Air Force Service. Oh, yes, I've heard of them. I'm a little bit surprised, too, especially in today's climate, that there hasn't been any. There's a new... I posted it on my personal Facebook, but there's a new show coming out that's about the Indian fighters in World War II who fought the Japanese. And I mean Indians. They're from India. And a lot of them were women. And I'm actually looking forward to that because, one, the show looks really big. It's going to be an Amazon Prime show. But two, it's a period that... or a region during World War II that a lot of people don't really know about. And these people helped lead the way to an independent India. A lot of those people that survived that would go on to sort of join sides with Gandhi and sort of form an independent India. So they're kind of important on that level too. But I'm actually really looking forward to that. Unfortunately, the trailer has a horrible, horrible pop song in it. That's an Indian pop song in it. But I'm guessing that that's either just the end credit song or the opening credit song for the show. So I hope that's it. But it looks interesting. I'm definitely going to be watching it. As for The Last Samurai, Jacob, yeah. Oh, I love The Last Samurai. I think that's such a good movie. And on top of that, that is such a cliched story, and it's proof that you can take a cliched story and still make it work. One, Tom Cruise is an amazing actor. I don't care what people say. I love him as Colonel Stauffenberg in Valkyrie. But The Last Samurai is such a solid movie. I'll fucking tell you that. I remember the first time I watched it, and that's a long movie. Edward Zwick directed that, and he also directed Glory, by the way. Glory is another amazing movie based on actual events, and that poor division, they got slaughtered at Fort Wagner. They got slaughtered. Utterly slaughtered during that battle. And I'm actually glad that the movie Glory depicts that, and isn't like, oh, they turned out to be victorious. No, they all got their asses killed. I mean, that was a fucking slaughterhouse. And what was also brilliant about that, and I'm glad that the movie depicted that, is that those men were fucking brave as fuck. The 54th Massachusetts, that was one of the first all-black regiments. Because that was around the time period where Lincoln said, you know what, screw it. We need the men. Join. And they did. A lot of blacks joined the Northern Army in droves, as they should have. I mean, I'm sorry, but... the Civil War, a big chunk of it was indeed about slavery. Of course they should join and fight to help free their brothers, their families in the South. And so that's such a good story to tell. That's such a good fucking story to tell. There was the Harriet Tubman movie that just came out too that I was so looking forward to, but I heard that it turns into nothing but a preaching movie. And that it focuses more on the preaching element in a modern sense than it does on the actual history of Harriet Tubman and what she went through with helping, form the Underground Railroad and everything like that. And I'm sitting there like, you don't need that modern preaching. Just tell the fucking story of Harriet Tubman. And you've got your movie. Her story is dramatic enough. You don't need to add any of this modern bullshit to it. Django 1966 is awesome. I love Django 1966. It's such a fun movie and violent. Oh my god, is that movie violent? Like, shockingly so. I mean, like, the first fucking scene in Django is a woman being literally whipped on a scaffold. Now, that's an opening. It's also just a very dirty, disgusting film. Like, compare that to, like, the Sergio Leone movies, which are dusty, but they're otherwise pretty clean. Django is just this got mud everywhere, and because of that, everything's falling apart. Everything's so grimy and gross. Ugh! I have the Blu-ray for it. Great Blu-ray. The Blu-ray only brings out the mud even more, and the details that they did on the set. A lot of great set design work on that movie too, in terms of making it look like this is a rundown piece of shithole. Oh, it absolutely incredibly over the top. Incredibly over the top, and I love it in every way. My biggest complaint with it, though, is the dub. The dub is terrible. I can only watch it in Italian with English subtitles because of how bad the dub is. And plus, Franco Nero's voice is just better than what they used for the dub anyways. That's not a very good dub for the movie. In contrast, Sergio Corbucci's The Great Silence has a very good dub, and that's because they use a lot of the original actors in it. But the dub in that, like Klaus Kinski, that's him voicing himself in that movie, and it shows. And The Great Silence is an excellent film. That is Sergio Corbucci's masterpiece, not Django. It's The Great Silence. You should watch that. If you haven't watched it yet, watch The Great Silence. I've also done a podcast on that movie. I've praised Suspiria. No. I love Italian movies. Are you kidding me? Especially the garbage movies, the horror films that they would release. I've been watching Italian horror films, binging them recently. Like, I recently watched a movie called Bio Omega, which is part of the Necrophilia trilogy. That should say enough right there. And I gotta tell you, not much grosses me out in movies. I mean that. Not much really grosses me out. Except eating. When I see characters genuinely eating in a film, it grosses me out to no end for some reason. Now, and I'm not saying like, oh, they're at a dinner and they're just naturally eating. That doesn't really gross me out. I mean, it's like when they get grease all over their face and they're chewing and there's like close-ups on their mouths and stuff like that. That grosses me out. And in Bio Omega, there is a scene where a girl is eating this porridge, and just in the most disgusting way possible, and I gagged. I was gagging the entire way through. There's a Troma movie called Poultrygeist. An amazing movie, by the way. But there's a whole scene of them eating chicken in that film, and I just gag the entire time. One of the best Troma movies out there, by the way, Poultrygeist. I think it was like Night of the Chicken Dead or something like that. It's a fucking great movie. Great movie. Some of the greatest gore effects I've ever seen in a movie. So over the top. I love it. I can see that, Jacob. I really can see having trouble with Italian movies because they're shot in such a weird way. And one is because they're cheap. Especially towards the 70s and 80s, the Italian economy was in such a tank that they started making really cheap movies. But two, they always shoot them silent, and then would dub them in whichever language they needed. So you'd have some actors speaking German, some speaking English, some speaking Spanish, some speaking Russian in a few cases, and of course Italian. And so they just shoot it silent and dub them in their respective Jacob, I'm sorry. I keep calling you Jacob. I'm really sorry. I know it's Jackson. I don't know why. I'm meaning Jackson. I really am. Actually, it's because I know a Jacob Jackson. I think that's why. My apologies. Anyways, but they shoot the film silent, dub them in whatever language they needed to. Italian, English, French, German, Spanish. Those are the big ones. And so no matter what version of the film you find, that's still going to sound a little bit off. And that's honestly the biggest problem I have with Italian movies is that sometimes the dub is just so off. The dubbing is just so off, I can't get on board with it. I've recently watched a movie called Alien Contamination, made in 1980. Really fun movie, where the movie is about alien eggs that explode on you, and the gunk that explodes on you causes you to then explode. That is literally the context of the movie and the plot of said movie, and it is awesome. Also, the Italians had the best gore effects. Sorry, Tom Savini, but the gore effects in Italian movies are just... It's Nick, yeah. Yeah. Again, sorry. I'm literally meaning to say Jackson. Don't know why I'm saying Jacob. Hey, Martin. You missed my rant on Dracula 2020. But right now we're talking about Italian trash, aka Italian movies. It's the Italian neo-realism films that came out right after the end of the war that I don't really care for, like Bicycle Thief. Objectively, I can see and respect the movie, but I'm not interested in that. I like the sort of horror shit and stuff like that. However, I'll tell you what, a country in which the films that I'm watching, I want to watch more of is Spain. I really want to get into Spanish movies more because recently I watched a movie called Let the Corpses Lie, which was made in 1974 and was a zombie flesh-eating movie before Dawn of the Dead. So it actually came out a few years before Dawn of the Dead. 4 years before Dawn of the Dead. And that was a creepy-ass fucking movie. Directed by a Spaniard. It was a Spanish-Italian co-production. And it was genuinely really good. I mean, just the atmosphere alone in that movie really, really sold it. And, Creature Feature Double Feature. There's reasons why I'm not bringing that back. And a lot of it stems from the fact that I don't like having guests on my show anymore that I don't physically know. And 90% of the people that I know do not give a shit about any of the movies that I do. So, that's why Creature Feature Double Feature hasn't gotten to season 3. I tried it. It didn't work out. So, Martin, you're trying to survive the dragon apocalypse. I'm trying to survive the coronavirus. Let that sink in. So Dracula 2020 doesn't really matter anymore. In fact, everything doesn't really matter anymore. We're all going to die of the coronavirus. I live on Long Island, everyone, and Long Island is going apeshit because of that, the coronavirus right now. It's kind of reminding me of swine flu, even though this is definitely worse than swine flu in terms of what people are getting. And you know that the Chinese aren't doing very well, or are probably at least worried about what's going on, simply because of the fact that they've shut down an entire city. I mean, an entire city is under quarantine. That's pretty fucking bad. But, oh well. Well, that's just it. Jackson, Nick Jackson. See, I said your name right this time. Unless I physically know somebody, I don't really consider them a friend. And that is no offense to any of you guys or anything like that. It's just a personal preference that I've realized since my mishaps with Geeks for Geeks and everything like that. And stuff like that. I don't want to get into it anymore than that. But I have learned my lesson, at least in terms of that department, and that's why I don't do it anymore. And why I won't do it anymore. Well, then do videos. Just gotta sit down and do them. People who always complain that they don't have time to do videos or anything like that, I always say it's bullshit. If you want to do videos, you're going to do videos. Doesn't matter if you're doing it at 3 o'clock in the morning and losing some sleep over it. You're going to do videos. That's what separates the men from the boys, ladies and gentlemen. The men from the boys. Anyways. But yeah, I watched Let the Sleeping Corpses Lie. A really good movie. By the way, there's some really great gore effects at the end of that movie. Holy shit. There's a scene where there's this woman who's just talked to her friends on, like, she's in a hospital, and the zombies just rip her to shreds. And unlike in Dawn of the Dead, where the guts are very clean and everything like that. First off, a zombie rips it out and it's disgusting looking. But on top of that, the way how the blood just explodes out of her, it's not like suddenly it's just there. It looks like there's a lot of pressure that's been built up underneath her skin, and so when it's finally released, it sprays. But it's not like a water fountain. It's just like a short burst, like a pimple popping, and it's so fucking gross. Oh, it's so beautiful. I miss doing gore effects. I really do. Doing gore effects is a lot of fun for me. I have a lot of fun. It's one reason why my movies constantly have a giant bloody mess in it. I can ask any of my crew if an Adam Noyce movie doesn't have a mess in it, you kind of gotta like raise an eyebrow at it. Great job. Welcome back, then. Yeah, I know laptops die and everything like that. Yeah, I know. I know the pain. I know the pain. I definitely know the pain of that. Oh, another thing that I'm really into for some reason, I'm really into the Hannibal Lecter stuff. Not the show. I'm talking about those movies. Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, and then Red Dragon. Specifically Red Dragon. I thought Red Dragon was phenomenal. Again, that was part of my New Year's resolution, is to watch more movies. And I think I'm doing that. It doesn't, and I don't mean that they need to come out in 2020. I mean, just movies that I haven't seen before. It doesn't matter when they were made, but movies that just I haven't seen before, and I want to watch more movies. So that's why I'm doing it. Yeah, no, I'm not a guest on anyone's videos unless I physically know them and I worked with them. Unless I physically know them, I'll be a guest on their show. Like on Game Controller Network, that's Antonio's channel. I was a guest on a couple of those episodes. And that's because I physically know him. He's now an A&P partner. He works with me. But no, I won't go on anyone's channel, and I won't have anybody on my channel. That's just how it works. And I know my subscribers count has been hit as a result as well. But I don't care, this is my channel, God damn it, I'm going to run it the way that I want to run it. That's how everyone should look at their channel, by the way. Everyone should look at running their channel that way. I like Joker, by the way. Joker was alright. I prefer Taxi Driver. I watched The Irishman. The Irishman I thought was really good, too. My friend Oliver wasn't a big fan of it. Or he liked it, it's just wasn't his favorite. I personally really enjoyed it. I think it was about 45 minutes too long, but other than that, I really enjoyed it. It's literally just the final act in that movie that I didn't like. Everything else I was totally on board with. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm going to play that trailer now. So, all I can say is really, hang on to your fucking butts, because this is definitely a, uh-oh. Hopefully this will work. It's a hard knock life. Wouldn't it just be like the Human Centipede, but with dicks? 12,100,040 lesbians! Come on, what? Your poop look is what you both like! Take a fucking shower! I'll go get some popcorn. So yeah, starting in fucking A, it's always It's always November and February that I have a hard time with. Um, that, but anyways, February 27th. That it's is what's going to be basically dominating my channel. is that show? Antonio, Adam, and Lucas, and again, every Thursday and every Saturday, a new video is going to come out, and that's going to dominate 5 weeks. And then after that, the revamped podcasts are going to start up again. The new format's going to start up again. Frugal Filmmaking is staying on YouTube, by the way. There is a reason for that. And I'm not going to get into why, but there is a reason for it. And I don't think Stupefied Film History is going to be a thing anymore. Those always did bad, and I think I'm just going to make a little bit more podcasts. But that's what's going to happen. Yeah, we shot Antonio, Adam, and Lucas over the course of the year, late 2018 and through 2019, and it was we were just shooting it on and off between other projects and everything like that. And now it's a full thing, and we're actually about ready to shoot season 2. I said this earlier in the show, but we are about ready to shoot season 2. Next month, actually, in March, is when we plan on starting to shoot it. So, looking forward to that. Sorry, I'm just bringing the music back in. The music actually helps me concentrate and also gives something of a background a background noise to sort of follow up. No, what was the dragon reference then? I thought you were watching Dragon Wars. You know, that masterpiece. Jackson, El Cid, Ben-Hur, Spartacus, and Fall of the Roman Empire, all good movies. All good movies. My favorite one on that list is definitely Ben-Hur. I think Ben-Hur is just a genuine masterpiece. I would say then it goes Spartacus. And I don't think you'll have a problem with that. I know you're not a fan of Stanley Kubrick, but that is definitely by far the least Kubrick movie he's made. And that's because he had no creative control over it. It was all mainly Kirk Douglas. That was really Kirk Douglas's film. Then I'd go El Cid and then Fall of the Roman Empire. Now, out of all of them, the one that's definitely the prettiest to look at is definitely El Cid. El Cid, out of all of those, has the best cinematography by far. It's just so beautifully shot. And again, because they had to be really creative in terms of how they shoot it, because despite it being an epic, it did not have the biggest budget out of the epics. And so they had to be very creative in terms of how they shoot their extras. However, I will definitely say that El Cid has probably the worst battle scene in it out of all these movies. It's just really flat and uninteresting. However, Anthony Mann learned his lesson from El Cid, because in The Fall of the Roman Empire, the fight scenes are amazing. And again, same director, basically same crew working on that movie as El Cid. So, yeah, I'd say The Fall of the Roman Empire is the weakest one out of that. It's still a good movie, though. Still a good movie. Well, I like Kubrick. I think The Shining is amazing. I don't really care for 2001: A Space Odyssey. I prefer the book, and I also prefer 2010 over 2001. However, I love Eyes Wide Shut. I love The Shining. Full Metal Jacket's amazing. Barry Lyndon, I think, is a terrible movie. I think it's so needlessly boring for no reason at all when it shouldn't have been boring. Paths of Glory, I think, is a really great film. Yeah, I think he's a pretty good filmmaker. It's a really good filmmaker. I like him more than Kurosawa. I'll say that. I still think Kurosawa is probably the most overrated director out there. No. Probably Steven Spielberg. just because I don't get the hype over his stuff. He's made some really great stuff, but a lot of his stuff I just don't really care about because, quite frankly, I didn't grow up with it. That's why. A lot of people care about a lot of his stuff is because they grew up with it. I didn't. Oh, Rain of Fire. I haven't seen that movie in so long. Oh, I remember liking it, and I remember having the opinion that this is a really underrated movie. I borrowed it on DVD, and I really enjoyed it. And I was really young. I think I was a freshman in high school the last time I saw it. I remember liking it. So that's something I would really like to watch again. See, I thought you were doing a Dragon's Wars reference. And I was like, wow. I thought I made obscure references. Yeah, I love Full Metal Jacket. I love Full Metal Jacket because it's literally the only war movie I've ever seen where there is no humanity in it at all. Well, I like both halves of Full Metal Jacket. I think Full Metal Jacket is just a really good fucking movie. I do agree that the first half of the movie is the superior part, but I like them both. I think that final shootout scene is just so intense, and I love it. I love it. But that is the only war movie, as I said, where there is no humanity at all. However, I do think that my favorite Vietnam War movie is Apocalypse Now, and that's not really a Vietnam War movie. So yeah, I'll disagree with you on that. What do y'all think of Alfred Hitchcock? Out of curiosity. Recently got back into him because I watched Tightrope, which was an interesting experiment of a movie. Didn't necessarily work completely, but then again, Hitchcock himself admitted that it didn't really work completely. But that was the movie where they're trying to... Not Tightrope, it's just called Rope. Where they tried to make it look like it was one continuous take. I thought it was pretty engaging. However, because that's sort of based off of a true story, the real story was actually made into a much better movie, in my opinion, called Compulsion. And Orson Welles plays the lawyer in the second half of that movie and steals the fucking show. But that movie was really fucking great. Compulsion, directed by Richard Fleischer, who directed Tora Tora Tora. He directed the sequel to Conan the Barbarian. He directed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Fantastic Voyage, that's another great movie. So he's done a lot of good stuff. And I highly recommend Compulsion. Really, really solid movie. Yeah, Apocalypse Now is an experience. That's the only way that I can really describe it as well, is it is an experience. Yeah, Arlie Armory is a blast to watch. He has a few scenes in The Frighteners, directed by Peter Jackson, and he steals the show in those as well. Oh, man. I love The Frighteners, by the way. Early Peter Jackson's great, until he turned into a hack with The Hobbits. But yeah, Peter Jackson used to be my favorite director, believe it or not. Yes, Conan the Destroyer is awful, and Red Sonja is even worse. Well, it's sort of funny because they were really trying to go more towards apparently what the comics were like in those movies, and it just didn't work with live action, I guess. Or they just should have revamped it completely, because you can't really blend that sort of really grounded, realistic portrayal in Conan the Barbarian with the craziness that is Conan the Barbarian in the comics. And unfortunately, that's what they did with Conan the Destroyer. So it just doesn't work. No. Yeah. I would say that was one of Arnold's worst films. I'm not a big fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I just really like Conan the Barbarian. I mean that genuinely. I really like Conan the Barbarian because I'm a huge fan of John Milius. Now, if you want to learn about a character and who I want to aspire to be, it is John Milius. If you mix John Milius with Roger Corman, that is who I want to be. Oh, I'm not afraid to admit it either. I am aspiring to be the next Roger Corman. Oh, I love Red Dawn. John Milius. Um, oh, I thought you were talking about. But anyway, I'll talk about John Milius for a little bit. John Milius, one super interesting man. But his film Red Dawn, a lot of people poo-poo over as being like a really pro-American film. And in many ways it is a very pro-America film. However, a lot of people fail to see the subtext of the movie, which is about these teenagers that turn into murderers because of the situation that they are thrown in. And the ending, especially, where the older brother holds and cradles the dying younger brother, is really sad. And you see the Cuban ready to shoot them down, ready to shoot them dead, and he can't because he has humanity too. So the critics really harp on it, on the fact that it's very one-sided and everything. That's not true. That really isn't true, especially with the Cuban. The Cuban in particular is definitely the most human out of the enemies, or out of the communists in that film. But there's also another scene where there's a young man that the Wolverines shoot, and it's a close-up of him, and he looks terrified, looks away, only then does Patrick Swayze shoot him. Like, to me, if it was just a one-sided, Dirty Dozen kind of ordeal, you wouldn't have had any of that stuff in there. You wouldn't have had any remote humanity to your bad guys in the film. So I think there's a lot more to Red Dawn than meets the eye. I think Red Dawn is still a genuinely great film. Also, great soundtrack by Pazzo Bolondoris. I mean, it's not Conan the Barbarian, but it's still really, really good. However, I will say this, that Red Dawn killed John Milius' career because of the liberal backlash in Hollywood and the critics. It just killed his career. And it's not like the film was a financial failure. The movie was a huge hit. But because of liberal Hollywood and their higher-than-thou, mightier-than-thou mentality, they shut John Milius out because originally Red Dawn was going to be a really small, low-budget anti-war film, and John Milius said, fuck it, tore that script up, and made an entirely new movie. And quite frankly, I love Red Dawn. I think Red Dawn is a genuinely great film, the one made in 1984, not the remake. Unfortunately, I saw the remake in theaters, but the original Red Dawn is such a good movie. And I do think that there's more to it than meets the eye. That'd be something I could do a podcast on, because I genuinely like that movie quite a bit. I love Roger Corman. I have not seen Blood In and Blood Out. I have not. What is that movie? Why have I never heard of it before? Wait, no. Why does it sound familiar, I should say? I'm going to look it up. Let me look it up. Oh, Bill Conti did the music. Cool. Oh my god, this movie was a giant bomb. $35 million budget, made only $4 million back. Holy shit. Huh. Sorry, I'm just reading up on this. This does sound interesting. I kind of like those movies where characters sort of intertwine. Um, yeah, so I've heard the director's cut is longer than the theatrical cut. Giant bomb though. That's a way to describe it. A oh, hold on, did I freeze? I shouldn't have frozen. Am I back to normal now? No. Okay, good. My screen froze for a little bit. Sorry. A cop prison gang action drama epic. That is definitely a way to describe that movie. Do I have a number one favorite war film of all time? I do. It is Gettysburg. Gettysburg. Hands down. And yes, I will put the director's cut to Gods and Generals there as well. I can't really pick between the two of them. Two very different movies made by the same filmmakers. But I just love them both. I just really, 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 really love them both. Zulu is right up there. I fucking love Zulu. Zulu is a great film. Genuinely great film. Yeah, fucking love Gettysburg. Saw that in theaters. Holy shit. I cried. I cried so many times during Gettysburg. You don't realize how into the American Civil War I am. Like, I reenact and shit. I'm really into the American Civil War. But yeah, my favorite film, without question, favorite war film, is without question Gettysburg. In fact, it's my second favorite movie of all time. So, in fact, I was just listening to the soundtrack a little while ago to get myself ready for the show. One of the best soundtracks ever composed, too. But yeah, I love Gettysburg. Now, a lot of people don't like Gettysburg because it's so fucking long. I mean, it's almost 4.5 hours long if you watch the director's cut. And the reason for that is because Gettysburg was originally going to be a 3-part miniseries, I believe, called The Killer Angels. Now, the Killer Angels bicycle gang didn't like that, even though the book it's based on, which is also great, was called The Killer Angels. But yeah, so if you see early promotions for Gettysburg or early TV coverage for Gettysburg, it was called The Killer Angels, only later did they change it to Gettysburg. However, Ted Turner, who was putting up a good chunk of change for that movie, was so impressed by the footage he was seeing and the level of detail that he was getting from director Robert Maxwell, and who's a great director, really underrated director in my opinion. His movie Copperhead, despite it being a really low budget indie film, period film, I thought was a pretty solid movie and an interesting topic that no one really talks about during the American Civil War. But anyways, was so impressed that he said, no, this needs to be made into a movie. This needs to be released in theaters. And so that's why the movie is as long as it is, and why, if you watch it, it's even structured very much like a 3-episode miniseries. It's because that was always the original intent, not a 4.5 hour long movie. My number one favorite film is King Kong 33, and King Kong '05. I have a very hard time picking between the two of them because I've always said this in terms of why they are the way they are, and it's because King Kong 33 really introduced me to the art of filmmaking. It was the first time I ever really paid attention to how they made a movie, and a lot of that was because of that amazing documentary on the second disc on the DVD. But King Kong '05 was the movie that, when I left the theaters, which was after King Kong 33, I saw King Kong 33 before King Kong '05. I was in 5th grade. And I left the theaters of King Kong '05 saying, I want to make movies. Literally. I said that to my dad. I said, I know what I want to do now. I want to make movies. And so I owe King Kong 05 a lot of what I do now. And King Kong 33. So that's why I have those two up there. It's just because I just love them both. 1917 was pretty good. There's a middle ground in that movie. There's like 20 minutes in the middle of that movie that are just boring as fuck. But the first act of that film and the final act of that film are so good. So good. In fact, the scene where they actually go into no man's land, that our two main characters, I was on the edge of I was holding my breath in. It was so good. And by the way, the music in 1917 was done by Thomas Newman, one of the best composers out there. If you want to know a good example of what type of a soundtrack that he did, listen to the Shawshank Redemption soundtrack or The Green Mile. 1917 has that kind of a soundtrack to it. I recommend it, and you have to see it in theaters. You have to see 1917 in theaters. There's no other way to experience a movie like that. I'm so glad that I saw it in theaters. Very, very good movie. And a lot of attention to detail in terms of being historically accurate, or being as historically accurate as possible, despite the situation being fake. And I really appreciated that. I really enjoyed that. And it was just, it made me want to go out and make movies. It was that kind of movie. Like, I saw the behind the scenes of, like, specifically that final bit where they could only do 4 takes, and there was actually 1,200 extras there. Made me want to go out and make a movie. So, very few films do that to me now. 1917 did, so props to it. I actually kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. I was talking about really being interested in the one-take movie, where everything is supposedly one shot, kind of like Birdman. However, I think it tends to be a gimmick. I'm more of a fan of long takes than one-shot stuff. For example, War and Peace, made in 1968. That fucking bloated epic where they had 12,000 extras for this battle scene. There is one scene in that battle scene, the Battle of Borodino, which, by the way, was the bloodiest battle of the Napoleonic War. It was a fucking bloodbath. Where literally the camera travels from one corner of the battle to the other. It's just one dolly shot, going from literally one corner of the battlefield to the other. And let me tell you, that is one of the most impressive shots I've ever seen. And there's several Russian war films, the Liberation War series, which, again, Russian propaganda, but the filmmaking that went into that movie is astonishing. Those movies, those series of films, the Liberation film series, which are all on YouTube for free with English subtitles, have these long takes that just stretch from one corner of the battlefield to the next, and it is so impressive to watch. Like, there's one scene during the Battle of Berlin in the final Liberation film that the camera literally goes from the bottom floor of a building to the top, and their fight through the entire building. And this was made in the early 70s, so before, like, 71. So it was actually probably shot in the late 60s. And no steady cams. It all had to be a dolly or a crane. Like, let that fucking sink in. Let that sink in. But if you also want to watch a good one take, watch Touch of Evil, directed by Orson Welles. And I know a lot of people always hail the opening credit sequence. However, there's one that I find even more impressive, and that's a dialogue scene that takes place entirely inside of one room, and the camera goes from one side of the room to the next and back again, and it's a 5-minute take, 5.5-minute take, and the staging in that scene, you don't even realize it's one take until somebody tells you. It's probably my favorite long take in any movie, actually. Touch of Evil is really good. Specifically, watch the Orson Welles cut. Now, you see, that's not fair. Science fiction is not fair, because are you grouping kaiju movies in on that? Because if you are, it's the original Godzilla. But if you're not, it's Interstellar, directed by Christopher Nolan. Yes, it is, and I'm not lying. Yes, it is. It's Interstellar by Christopher Nolan. That movie fucking changed. I left the theater a changed man. I did. And I adore the message behind Interstellar, the acting in Interstellar, the editing of Interstellar, the effects, the sound design, the meaning, the allegories, the themes of Interstellar. It just blew me away. And I know a lot of people don't like the film. I don't give a fuck. Such a good movie. Such a good fucking movie. Left a theater, a changed man, definitely. But if you include kaiju movies on that list, it's the original Godzilla, hands down. I mean, the movie's just so good. And again, just to reiterate, everyone, I'm looking to end this live stream at around 11:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hello, Nick. Welcome back. Why doesn't that surprise me that Godzilla is your favorite movie of all time? It is for a lot of fans out there. It is the favorite movie of all time. It's number 3 for me. So it's right up there. So, and nothing to be ashamed of, number 3. So I just will say this. I do not have a top 10 favorite movies list. I have a top 5. The top 5 is pretty solid. Actually, it's not even top 5. It's the top 4. My top 4 favorite movies rarely change. And I mean rarely change. They stay the same. Everything below that, below 4, change all the fucking time. To the point that I've just stopped trying. I've just stopped trying. Yeah, Nick, I've moved to Long Island. I've been here for about a year now. So I've been living here for about a year now. So actually, yeah, it's been a year. It's been a little over a year. Yeah. King Kong vs. Godzilla is such a piece of shit. I'm sorry. It is such a bad movie. Why? Oh, it's such a tonally inept movie. And the reason why I say that is because, look, if you're going to make a spoof on television, that's fine. Do it. And especially if Shinichi Sekizawa's writing, fucking go for it. But the music doesn't... Akira Ifukube's music is so dark and brooding and serious. Why that doesn't fit. Someone like Masaru Sato would have fit. Even fucking Richiro Manabe would have fit better than Ifukube. Which is not knocking Ifukube's score. Ifukube's score is good on its own. It just doesn't work in that movie. In fact, it's why I prefer the American cut, is because the American cut at least uses really cheesy and campy stock music, such as from The Creature from the Black Lagoon and The Wolfman, and it sort of makes the movie a little more enjoyable, because it fits the movie a little bit more. Or at least in my opinion. Neither one of the versions of the movies, are particularly good, in my opinion. Godzilla vs. Megalon, I would agree, is worse than King Kong vs. Godzilla. Yeah. I still enjoy the movie, though, because I have the mentality of a 5-year-old whenever I watch it, and that's really all that I care about. Is that. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Megalon is definitely fun bad. It is fun bad. It was a movie made to quote Stephen Galbraith IV, it was a movie made to entertain 5-year-olds, and if you look at it with that mentality, it succeeds in droves. It's just like the Showa Gamera movies. And I made sure to say this in the podcast I did on Noriaki Yuasa, the director of all but one of the Showa era Gamera movies. Watching it with an objective lens on, with an analytic brain, they're terrible. They are garbage. That's especially the ones from Gauss up, I think are crap. They are garbage. However, Were they made for that kind of an audience? And I don't care what anyone says, they were not. Those movies were made to entertain 5-year-old kids. And if you watch those movies with that mentality in your head, it succeeds. They succeed tremendously. And I know they succeed tremendously because not only was I entertained by those movies when I was a kid, but I've seen a little kid that my mother used to take care of. He be entertained as fuck by all of the Showa Gamera movies. Ironically, with the exception of Baragon. He found Baragon extremely boring. But he specifically loved Gamera versus Jiger. He loved that one. Because the monster terrified him, I think. But he would sit there and watch him and be glued to the screen. And this was a kid who would bounce off the walls. You put on Gamera or Ultraman or Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. He loved Monster Zero. He was glued. He would not move. And to me, I'm just like, yeah, you got to look at it with that mentality. You have to look at it with that mentality, and that's what I do. I don't watch '05 as often as I watch 1933 either, and that's just because it's such a long movie. I adore Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. Recently rewatched it. I adore it. It is so fucking good. And I know people are going to bring up, oh, but it would have been so much better if it had Varan and Anguirus in it. I don't give a shit. I do not give a shit. In fact, this was the movie that convinced me that if the Godzilla saga was to ever be made, I would have the main good guy that comes in on the last movie be King Ghidorah. I would rewrite King Ghidorah's origin and say, nope, now he's a good guy. Fuck it. That was the movie that convinced me that not only can King Ghidorah be a good guy, but you can also change all of their origins and it work. And on top of that, it's sort of the antithesis to Shin Godzilla. Shin Godzilla is all about, a young generation coming in, replacing the old generation and forming a new prideful Japan. GMK is not. GMK is about Japan forgetting what they did and how bad they were. And first off, I think it takes balls for a movie to do that. It takes a movie to discuss that, to actually even bring it up, especially when the government in Japan, the Shinzo Abe, he's a Nanking Massacre denier. He denies that happened, which disgusts me to no end. But yeah, so GMK, they're saying you have forgotten what we've done. You have forgotten. You want to forget. Now you're going to pay. And of course it'd come back in Godzilla. And that's part of why I love it so much, is that movie, more than any of the other ones in the Millennium series for sure, and I would say even more than any of the Heisei ones, Godzilla means something. Godzilla represents something that is near and dear to the Japanese people. And that is a reminder of all the shit that they did beforehand that they're forgetting about all these years later. And I think that's really clever. That's really creative. And it really sank in on this last viewing. While Shin Godzilla is all about, national pride. It's not completely, don't get me wrong, but it has a very nationalistic sense in that a new generation's coming in and we are finally going to say we're proud to be Japanese, which is fine. I just want to say that. You've heard me rant about how much I love Shin Godzilla and everything like that. I love the message in Shin Godzilla. I love the idea. Yeah, fucking kick the bureaucrats' ass. Absolutely. Fuck bureaucracy. It does nothing but terrible shit when there's an emergency. And also, I love the idea, the people that go off against, specifically August Ragone, I'm thinking of him, but who just rail against Shin Godzilla as being like, oh, how dare they feel pride in being Japanese. Why not? Why can't you be proud of being who you are or where you came from? Why can't you be proud of that? Why can't you be proud of your home? Damn right I'm proud to be an American. I love the fact that I am an American. I love the fact that I live in this goddamn country. Why can't someone from Japan have that same mentality for them? Why couldn't somebody living in Tokyo say, I love my country. I love my country. I love my home. I love my people. Why? Why can't they have that mentality? Because of something they did way back in 1945. Why can't? Because that's why a lot of people have that mentality, and people are afraid of Japan getting even remotely nationalistic, is because of what they did in World War II. They're afraid that they're going to be, the empire again, which I suppose could be a thing, though I fucking doubt it, with today's technology and everything like that, and how buddy-buddy we are with Japan. We are buddy-buddy with Japan. However, there is room for both. You can have both. You can have this new generation coming in trying to sweep out the old to be like, all right, let's move forward. Let's take Japan in a new direction. But yet you can also sit there and go, but we're not going to forget what we did. We're not going to forget our past. You see, the key for anyone, even on a personal level, is if let's actually narrow it down. Let's make it something personal. Let's make it about an individual. You did something bad in your past, and you're looking to move forward from it. But you're in this constant hurdle of are you afraid to move forward because of what happened, or are you going to say fuck it and move forward anyways? The key is that if you choose to move forward, which to me is the right decision, is you don't forget about what you did that was bad. You never forget that you did it. You just look back at it, remember that you did it, and try not to do that again. That is what the Japanese mentality should be. So it's partially why I think GMK and Shin Godzilla actually work really well as a double bill together. They work really well as two films together that have themes that are not only very Japanese, but are also very poignant to this day. That are very poignant in Japan. And both of them represent a very different side of the argument. One is a very, very spiritual, very inner side. That's GMK. GMK is very inner. The debates are very inner. They're very much in terms of feelings, very much in terms of that sort of mentality, while Shin Godzilla is very much the fiscal side of things, the responsibility, the governmental side of things. How are we going to get things done? The procedure of things. It's very down to business. Well, GMK is not. GMK is very much like, I want to feel. Let's feel this out. Let's think about this. What does this mean? What does it all mean? And I love that. I love that about both of them. Both of them succeed in droves with what they do, and I just adored them. Oh my god, GMK was so good. Like I hadn't seen that movie since I was in high school, and rewatching it was a fucking treat. I'll tell you, it was worth watching again. I think Shin Godzilla is my second favorite Godzilla movie. There, I said it. I just adore Shin Godzilla. It was just a perfect. It was just a perfect storm. It was lightning in a bottle, and that is rare for a movie to hit. Any movie. And it was Shin Godzilla. Again, I kind of did a podcast about that. But yeah, that was all about that. No, I did not see the new Mist TV series. I didn't even know there was a Mist TV series. First off, I love the movie, The Mist, directed by Frank Darabont. I like the movie way more than I like the book. In fact, I don't like Stephen King as an author whatsoever. I think his writing style is atrocious. And he does nothing but ramble. I read The Stand by Stephen King recently because I wanted to read something that wasn't a series, because I was just coming off of Timeline 191, which was an alternate history series. That was 11 books. 11 books. I read through 11 books, and let me tell you, that was amazing. I loved that series to no end. It was slow at times, but other than that, it was really good, really well researched. Harry Turtledove was a fucking genius. And I was interested in what was going on, not just in terms of the universe itself, but also the characters. I gave a shit about the characters. And that's tough. You can easily make it where it's just about the universe and that's it. No, he managed to blend both. However, I decided to read The Stand next because I wanted something that was kind of grand in scale, but wasn't 11 books long. And so The Stand took it. I listened to it. It was a fucking mess. And I read it as well. It is a rambling mess, just like The Stand. The only book by Stephen King I genuinely like, I think it's called The Long Walk or The Great Walk. And the premise of that movie is that you walk from someplace in Maine to Boston, and if you go under a certain mile per hour, you get shot and you die. And that sounds ridiculous, but he handled it very well. I really like that. I never considered those a trilogy. I mean, they are in the sense that they're all Stephen King, based off of Stephen King books directed by Frank Darabont, but they're all so different from each other that I just never really put them on the same par. I think my favorite is The Green Mile. I think that's just such a good movie. Then followed by The Mist. I would say The Mist is next, followed then by... No, I would say The Mist is my favorite. It's definitely the one that I go to the most. The Mist. I think that movie is phenomenal, especially the black and white cut. If you watch the black and white cut for the film, which is Frank Darabont's preferred cut of the movie, same exact cut as the colored one, by the way. It's just now in black and white. I think that's my favorite one out of them. Then The Green Mile, then Shawshank. All three of them, fantastic movies. It just comes down to personal taste. Yeah, The Green Mile is just so good. The Green Mile is just so good. Bawled my eyes like a baby during two scenes. One is when John Coffey saves that guy's wife. I guess that was like a brain tumor she had out of her. Saves her life. Loved that scene. And then, of course, his death scene is just so sad, so tragic. And the music. That's Thomas Newman, by the way. I said that he did the music to 1917. Yeah, Thomas Newman's one of my favorite composers out there, yeah. Though I didn't really care for it. The movie The Help, he did the score for that. That was by far my favorite thing about that movie was The Help score. That was a really good score. Road to Perdition, Sam Mendes movie. Road to Perdition had an amazing score, and that was by Thomas Newman. Well, The Mist did not make me cry. The Mist made me fall in love with fuck you endings. And Stephen King himself says that he prefers the movie's ending to his own ending. Because in the book, I don't know if you've read the book, but the book apparently ends with them all driving away in the car and their fate is uncertain. The movie bites you in the ass for being on board with our main character. Being on board with him. And so, like, the movie tricked you. The movie tricks you into being like, you're going to follow this guy because he's doing exactly what you think you would do in that situation. So you're going to follow him. Thomas Jane's character. And then all of a sudden, it bites you in the ass at the very end. And I love it. Yeah, Tom Hanks was in it. Very good movie. Very good movie. Not fantastic, but very good. Granted, I haven't seen that movie in so many years. So many years. So take my opinion on it with a grain of salt. Yeah, like it really did get me involved into the fuck you endings. The Mist, anyways. It really got me involved in those endings where everything is just bleak. That and a war movie, a German war movie, called Stalingrad, made in 1993. That movie, oh boy. Oh boy. That is a Tough movie to sit through because all the characters, they go through so much, and in the end, it doesn't fucking matter. And what's brilliant about Stalingrad's ending, and the fact that it is a fuck you ending, is that it's true. You know, not necessarily based on a true story. It's based on true events, but it's not really based. None of the characters are real in that film. But the whole mentality that no matter how hard they fought during that, it was for nothing. They all fought and died for nothing. And if they actually won, it would have been for a terrible cause. And that really sits in on that movie like no other war movie ever. And of course, it was made by the Germans. Only the Germans can truly understand that mentality. Because, well, they're living through it. That's another movie. Highly recommend it, Stalingrad. Don't listen to the dub. The dub is terrible. Listen to the original language version of that movie. Let's see. My least favorite Masaki Kobayashi film, I think it's called The Inheritance. Good movie, don't get me wrong, but it's just the weakest out of the movies I've seen that he's done. I haven't seen all the movies he's made, by the way. The Eclipse series released a series of 5 very early films by him. I haven't seen any of those, and I want to really bad. Specifically the one that deals with Japanese war criminals. I'm really interested in that one. Yes. Thomas Krzyzewski is in the 1993 Stalingrad. He's a main character in that film. The recent Stalingrad that was made was shit. I got about halfway through it and turned it off. I was so angry by that film. So angered. I hated the style. Hated the style of that movie. Well, that's because, Justin, that ending makes no sense. It literally comes out of nowhere and thematically doesn't work. All of the endings to Frankenstein Conquers the World make no fucking sense at all. And that's a problem I have with that movie. War of the Gargantuas at least thematically works. Doesn't make much sense beyond that. And that's a genuine problem with that movie as well. Yeah, watch it. Look it up. Stalingrad 1993. That's the one you want to watch. That's an excellent movie. Oh, I just never watched it for some reason. I still have it. I just haven't been able to watch it. Well, I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon. So, again, stay tuned for AAL and everything. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So yeah, this is the February live stream. Again, I'm doing these live streams the first weekend of every month. That is the plan. Or as soon as I can. You know, at least one of these a month. And they'll usually go from 9 p.m. to 11:15 p.m. Eastern Time. So, thank you all for joining. I'm glad this really picked up towards the end, because in the beginning it was kind of a mess. But certainly picked up by the end. I'm glad you all came. Yeah. Everything like that, I'm not sure. Favorite fantasy movie? I'm not a fantasy guy at all. Yeah, fuck it. It's Lord of the Rings. I know that's such a generic answer, but I love them. I'm not a fantasy guy. Not a fantasy guy at all. So, anyways, thank you all for tuning in. Yeah, so see you on the flip side. Sayonara, everyone.